Now, then earlier in the programme, we heard from Joe and Greg from Guernsey-based record label Magic Moustache, but they aren't the only label that's busy in the Channel Islands at the moment, and Bubble Brain Records has spent the last couple of years organising live events in Jersey, and next Friday they have arguably their biggest yet, as they welcome Creation Records founder and the man who discovered Primal Scream, Oasis, and plenty of others to the island. I spoke to James Dolan, one of the men behind Bubble Brain, and I started out by asking him about the label.
Bubble Brain Records is a little brainchild of Chris Allman, Gary Law, and myself. Really, just the general idea of an old school record company. You know, we literally started off by putting events on to raise capital and to raise awareness about the company, so we could actually invest a decent amount of money into Jersey bands, or pretty much Jersey bands and bands from all over. Really, we've released small things on Bandcamp and Spotify and iTunes for a band called Vegas. Some other small releases for some people in the States, Lux Flux, a couple of dance mixes and stuff like that. But we were really like looking into, like I say, putting on shows and giving the young bands and Jersey bands and Guernsey bands and basically bands from anywhere, you know, a little bit of a platform and exposure, just exactly the same as any record company's idea when they start off. This whole dream of getting people out there and having a hit record, I suppose. But that's the basic plan of it, you know, basically how we all started. I think they came up with the idea a few years ago, and you know, we really put it into process over the past 2 years, and getting a bit of traction with it, and people are finally understanding what we're all about, which is good. You know what I mean? A label for the people, by the people.
I started to see the name about a bit, like you say, over the last year and a half or so. So, what kind of events have you put on so far up to now?
It's putting on events in Jersey is a bit difficult. Like, we'd love to invite, you know, the new up and coming bands like the Blinders and Fontaines and stuff over here, but just there isn't enough. You know, there isn't enough or people don't know these bands enough to come out for them. Do you know what I mean? And to pay the ticket price for what they charge. But so what we decided to do, we started doing some tribute band nights, but not your average tribute band. You know what I mean? Not like 4 geezers in a wig. Do you know what I mean? Actually, which it did turn out to be 3 geezers in a wig. But you know, we got the best Nirvana tribute act in the world right now, Nirvana UK, and we got them on to do a show, and it was like going back in time, and it was like watching the real thing. It was spectacular, you know. And in at the Splash in Jersey, it really was. It was just this whole level of nostalgia, but also like amazing musicianship, and just the whole show they put on. It was like a real proper show. It was like you'd actually believe you were watching them. And we also had Outrage Against the Machine on to do a night again once, and that was exactly the same thing. You know, the guy turned up in a wig, and just you'd literally think you were listening to the real thing. You know, so we went on and done another one, and we done the Oasis one in the summer. Again, an amazing bunch of lads putting on the show, the whole attitude, the whole swagger. You know, everyone really bought into the concept of it. You know what I mean? And it was just a great night, just a fun night for everyone, and a real proper rock and roll night. It was like having the real thing there, and the atmosphere was like it was the real thing. Do you know? But people come out to those shows. People love those shows, you know. So it's great to do those, and then to put on a couple of new bands that people wouldn't necessarily have heard of. It gives them the exposure to play in front of a packed crowd, you know. And yeah, we've got I can't actually mention yet. We haven't announced them, but we've got 4 more coming up this year, but which we'll, you know, announce soon when we're allowed. Okay.
So you do the tribute band, but you put the up and coming sort of originals bands on before them.
Yeah, before them. Yeah.
Do they get a good response in that sort of situation normally?
Amazing response. It's brilliant because, you know, when you put these bands in front of a proper sound system, like a proper academy-sized sound system, you know, it blows people's minds. You know, people think, "Oh my God, where are this band from? They're amazing," and people assume they're from the mainland, or they assume they're from the States, or they assume they're from somewhere else. They don't realize that, you know, their homegrown talent is just as good, or sometimes if not better than a lot of the stuff that's out there. But because they don't get to see them on a good platform with a fantastic sound system, you know, they don't really take much notice of them when they're don't really know that they're around. So it takes these big nights to to give people awareness that they have got some absolutely smashing bands on the island.
And so next week, as people are listening to this, you've got another event coming up, but it's a slightly different one to the ones we've just been talking about. Tell us what it is you've got coming up.
Well, this is more for. This isn't like Well, this is completely different. It's for entertainment, but it's also we've got Alan McGee coming. Basically, Alan McGee's the co-founder of Creation Records, and the guy who signed Oasis and Primal Scream and Jesus and Mary Chain, My Bloody Valentine, Sugar, Boo Radley, Super Furry Animals. It's just endless,
It's quite a list.
But it's quite a list, yeah. Yeah, he's still working today. He's currently managing Las Vegas, Happy Mondays. He manages Cast as well, and he's got his new label, Creation 23, which has got the Clockworks, who have to be one of my new favourite bands, the Illicits and the K's. And loads of others, basically. Well, he's agreed to fit it in his busy tour schedule to pop over to Jersey to do a live interview and Q&A next Friday night. Oh no, Friday the 6th of March. And he's also going to do a DJ set as well, which is cool. It'd be great to hear what he loves and what his favourites are over the past 40 years of his fantastic music career, basically. But
James Dolan from Bubble Brain Records telling us about what they do and the event they have coming up next week. Now, one of the Jersey artists playing that is one very familiar to us here at BBC Introducing in the Channel Islands. It's Monty Taft, and this is his most recent single, I believe. This is Friend Not My Fear. Monty Taft with Friend Not My Fear, and he's one of the artists playing as part of Bubble Brain Records event next week. I continued by my conversation with James from Bubble Brain by asking that, as well as the interview and Q&A with Alan McGee, what else they've got coming up as part of that event?
What we're doing with that, it gives us an opportunity. So it's great for him to come to have a Q&A and to talk about his life and his experience with Creation Records and some behind the scenes stories of crazy rock and roll stuff that happened. But it also gives us a chance to put on 3 acts. We've got the Tarantulips, we've got Monty Taft, and we've got a new band called Dribbler, who are fantastic. It gives them the chance to actually play in front of him, where they wouldn't really ever get the chance to. Well, unless, just by luck, it could happen one day, like what happened to Oasis, he just popped in to see him. But, it just gives them the chance to play in front of, one of the greatest music moguls ever to have lived, really. Do you know what I mean? So, or still living. Yeah.
So it's kind of, I guess, the first part of the night, the interview and Q&A thing, that's a great opportunity for anyone who's either a fan of music or in a band, isn't it? To sort of come and
exactly
learn stuff.
Yeah, just come and learn, and anyone who's interested, say, in music, but also for young bands or people aspiring to want to put on events or run a company or just come along and hear from the inside, hear from the man himself, basically, who created something from scratch. I think he started his first little business thing by stealing newspapers at the age of 11, and then moving down to London from Glasgow and setting up a little club night on Fridays and Saturdays and had bands on, and made money on beer and literally pressed records, and just literally started from there, from earning £20 a week as doing a fanzine to being worth 34 million nowadays, and a back catalogue of some of the greatest bands ever. And it'd be great, people get a chance to ask him a question and actually meet him, get something signed. If you want to get your Oasis records or your Primal Scream records signed, just anything like that, just a chance to have 5 minutes with such an amazing dude. Blows my mind. I can't wait.
I think I said when I saw that it was happening over there that I wish I could get over for it. I don't think I'm going to be able to. It's a bit of a shame,
man.
but
come over,
yeah, it's a brilliant opportunity. I mean, you mentioned you've got the 3 bands playing the sort of after party thing: Monty, the Tarantulips, and Dribbler.
Dribbler, yeah.
Yeah, why was it those 3 that sort of stood out to you for this one?
Well, this is the thing. It's so hard to pick. And we've also got from before the event from 5:30. See, the Q&A doors open at 7:30, but from 5:30 to 7:30, we've got like the Songwriter Society, which is David Keenan's acoustic thing, where we'll have different acoustic acts on. I think David Keenan will headline that, and Craig Smith, One Poet, will be doing a set as well for that. So we've got other artists playing, but we could really only fit in two after the Q&A and before the DJ set. But we saw Dribbler the other day, and they just blew my mind. I was like, we have to get him in there. We just have to. So the reason we have them three is, well, the Tarantulips have done that. They're hardworking. They're really hardworking. They've got some good content out there. They've been away. They've done a little tour. It's like when you go away to somewhere and you play in front of 3 people or 10 people or whatever. You have to do those tours as a band. You have to, because you never know what will happen. Alan McGee turned up at King Tut's, and there was 12 people there, and and that's what happened to Oasis. So it's a good hardworking thing to go out and do the tours. And Monty, he's been playing for ages. His back catalogue is great stuff. He puts stuff out regularly, and just plays any given opportunity at any festival. Like I say, he was at Glastonbury and he was at Broadmasters. And Dribbler. Well, all I can say is that Dribbler, you just got to watch them.
I think it was last time Tarantulips were over here, Nick said to me that the band I have to look out for at the moment from Jersey is Dribbler. So I'm looking forward to seeing them at some point, hopefully. Yeah. Well, we'll have to combine stuff with the islands a lot more, and try and do some shows. Like we'll get some bands if you throw them our way to some of the nights that we got coming up over here, and it would be great to get some of the bands over to Guernsey at some point this year. It'd be fantastic. And if people want to come along next weekend, how can they get tickets and find out more?
The tickets are available from bookit.je, or you could just go onto the Bubble Brain Records Facebook page, and all the information's there. Oh, there's different tickets. There's there's a Q&A ticket, and then there's a separate ticket for the club night. But if you've got a Q&A ticket, then it obviously gives you entry for the whole event.
James Dolan from Bubble Brain Records, who are bringing Alan McGee over to Jersey for a Q&A and DJ set next Friday, along with live performances from Monty Taft to the Tarantulips. I'll get that out eventually. And Dribbler.
James Dundon.
On BBC Radio Jersey.
Now 11:22 morning. Hope you're enjoying the sun. We are now talking about a man who is visiting for the islands for the first time, and it's going to be a real coup for music over here for bands to showcase what they've got. Alan McGee is coming, and to tell us all about it is one of the event organisers, James Dolan. You all right, James?
Hello, mate. You all right?
Thanks for coming in. I'm really good. Thank you very much. So, for those not familiar with the name Alan McGee, because I've heard of him.
Yes.
Bit of a legend in the music scene. Tell us more.
Just a little bit of a legend in the music scene. Yes, Alan McGee was the co-founder of a record company called Creation Records back in the late 80s. Basically, he started off a little club night down in London. He's from Glasgow, but he started off a little club night down in London. Loads of bands used to come in and play, and they made a little bit of money. So they were like, right, let's do something with this money, because we just seem to be spending it all on boozing. So they were like, right, let's start a label. And they started a little label, and they signed a band called Loft, I think was the first band they signed, and they got on the top of the pops. And to be fair, it all just excelled from there. It just went gigantic. Every band that they touched just went phenomenally big. We had bands like House of Love, I think was one of their first bands, but then you got like My Bloody Valentine, you got the Jesus and Mary chain, then bands like Ride, Primal Scream, the Rave Culture Hit, and then obviously Primal Scream came out with Loaded, which absolutely just blew them up. Teenage Fan Club, another band who supported Nirvana, and then a band that I'm sure most people would have heard of. this little band from Manchester, same name as a shop. I think they were called Oasis, basically, ladies and gentlemen.
And yes. how did Oasis come to be under the Alan McGee sort of Creation Records?
Quite simply, one of those rock and roll stories that you hear. We played a gig once. Skee's been in the audience and said, "Have you guys got a record deal?" Noel went, "No," and he went, "Do you want one?" And that's it.
Wow.
Basically, they were that good.
So he's got stories then.
He's got some stories
Working with the Gallagher brothers.
like unbelievable stories with the Gallagher brothers and just Primal Scream and just everything. Like I say, it's quite crazy that you know, when you associate rock and roll bands, you know, you think of all these wild stories, but actually to hear that the actual record company were wilder than the actual bands on the label, and the bands on the label were Oasis and Primal Scream. So it's pretty crazy. There was a documentary called Upside Down, the documentary about the story of creation, and I watched it recently and just thought it was so interesting. And he's such a great speaker, and the way his stories are just phenomenally good.
Yeah.
You know, if you know, half the time you'd be like, nah, that can't be true. That really couldn't have happened. I'm not going to give anything away now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
but there are some pretty exciting, pretty crazy stories.
So Alan's a guy that's obviously lived life, and he's coming to the Channel Islands, I think, for the first time.
I think, yeah, he is, unless he's ever been here on holiday, but I don't think he has.
But in a professional way, you are getting him over here specifically to listen to some talent on the islands.
He's doing his Q&A tour, where we're going to do like a live interview with him, and then everyone will be able to like ask questions, and then we'll have like a meet and greet for the audience that comes to the Q&A. And then after that, he's going to do a DJ set. So before the DJ set, I'm going to put on some acts. So the acts that we've chosen to put on, two great acts from the island, is a band called the Tarantulips. It used to be Hot Plastic, and Monty Taft. Now, both of those bands, they've been... It was hard to pick which bands because there's a lot of good bands.
Yeah.
But they've really done quite a bit over the past couple of years. Like Monty's played Glastonbury. I've seen him over in Camden as well. You know, the Tarantulips have released a few singles, and they're playing all the time. They've done a little tour of the UK as well. So they're really hard working, and they've got a bit of content out there.
Yeah.
So I think he'll enjoy them. You know, they've kind of like got a grungy sound, I reckon. You know, and when people think of Alan McGee, they think of Oasis, but a lot of his stuff, you know, if you listen to Swerve Driver and not the early bands, you know what I mean? It was really kind of psychedelic, grungy, acid housey, kind of, you know, a real melting pot of different sort of stuff. But, you know, he really signs people. He's into people. If he sees something special, then you never know what will happen.
You said a minute ago he's like the Simon Cowell of the indie world.
Well,
he's
he's
going to be.
I wasn't going to say that on air because I didn't want to mention Simon Cowell. You know
Sorry,
what I mean?
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Alan McGee, that wasn't me.
I'm not being insulting at all, I'm sure, but it's just in that sort of in that vein, and a highly experienced man, still doing what he loves. You know, he started this in the 80s, still doing the record label, signing bands.
He stopped. Creation closed its doors in 2000 because it just got all kind of crazy, you know, and Primal Scream I think was the last band to ever release on the label, and then recently he opened up another label called Creation 23, and he's got young bands like the Clockworks and the Shambolics on there, and they're just again doing tremendously well.
That's great. Haven't you got a record label, James?
Yes, I have a record label. Me, Chris Allman and Gary Law started Bubble Brain Records a few years ago, and we're kind of, you know, inspired. I was always inspired by labels like Creation and Sub Pop and Rough Trade and stuff, and then look, obviously we went on and played in bands ourselves, and you know, done that sort of rock and roll lifestyle for quite a while, which was quite enjoyable, I must say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always been interested in doing that sort of stuff, and you know, it's hard for bands over here because... I was
going to say, how is the Channel Islands for music? Because there seems to be a lot of it around.
There's a lot of it around, but it doesn't seem to get its foot in the door in the UK like mainstream industry. So that's kind of like what this is about as well. You know, to open up a door, you know, just if he comes over, has a good time, has a Q&A, and then, you know, there'll be a point of contact. Maybe, you know, we'd be able to get some of the bands on his booking roster. Maybe he can give some advice, you know. Maybe he'll just turn around and go, I love him, I'll sign him now. Do you know what I mean? which obviously would be great for everybody involved. But, you know, just to have him here is a real good special thing for the island, and
yeah, definitely
obviously for the bands. And
it's really good. So people can still come along. There's still tickets.
There's still tickets available. They're available at bookit.je. There's VIP Q&A tickets. Well, when I say VIP Q&A tickets, they're just Q&A tickets, but he's the VIP.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, there's them tickets available, and then the Q&A will run from 7:30 to 10:30. There'll be a short interview in the middle of it, and we'll put on another act. We're gonna have two acoustic acts going on as well. One at the beginning of the Q&A and one in the middle. And actually, before the event, we'll probably open the upstairs roof terrace at about 5:30, and I'll have David Keenan up there with a few acoustic acts, just playing. We want to try and get as many acts in as
So
we
there's going to be
possibly
loads
can.
going on through the venue.
Yes, there will be. Yeah.
It's going to just be a packed evening. All right, so that's happening at Rojo Nightclub, 6th of March.
Friday the 6th of March.
Tickets, bookit.je. James,
Get your
thanks for
tickets.
coming in, mate.
You're very welcome, my man. Take care. I hope
Great
to see you there, mate. Cheers.
Fantastic.
Bye-bye.
It's James Dolan from Bubble Brain Records talking to us about that gig, Friday, 6th of March.
Big names, big conversations. James Dundon.
BBC Radio Jersey.